The man Roan Castellan had come to kill was already crying when the door slid back, and that made the job easier and harder at the same time. Easier, because a man who is weeping is a man who has stopped reaching for a weapon. Harder, because Roan had 3 things on his that morning, and only one of them was the work, and the work was the smallest of the 3. The other 2 were a wrapped box riding in the footwell of the skiff, and a melody he could not get out of his head. A 4-note thing his mother used to hum while she scaled fish on the back step of a house that no longer existed on a world he would never see again. Dex said behind him, low, not unkind, "You're always late. We talked about this. We talked about a lot of things. The party's at 1800. You know what Della does to people who are late to the party. I know what Della does." The target's name was Aldrich Soul, and according to the slate Sorsay had pushed to them that morning, he had sold the schematics for a colony's water reclamation grid to a syndicate that then bled the colony dry, 400 families paying triple for the right to drink, until the syndicate got bored and turned the valves off entirely. 11 dead, mostly the old, mostly the young, the way it always went. Soul had walked. Soul had walked because the firm Roan worked for had stood up in a paneled room under a flag and gotten him acquitted on a technicality of jurisdiction, and the firm had been paid a great deal of money to do it. And then the firm had pushed a slate to 2 men in a rented skiff and arranged to be paid a second time to undo the first thing it had done. That was the parts could never sit with. The double dip. The firm bills the world to set the wolf loose, then bills the world to put the wolf down, and the wolf pays for both with money he stole from the sheep. It's called it the cleanest racket in the galaxy. And he wasn't wrong, but Roan had stopped doing the math on it years ago. The math didn't help. What helped was the slate, and the names on the slate, and the 11 families who had paid triple to drink. Roan was a religious man in the private way that men become religious when they have done a great deal of harm and need somewhere to put it. He believed quietly, the way he believed the floor would hold his weight, that he was a scour, that the universe ran a current of filth, was a thing that dragged along the bottom of it, and that the dragging served a purpose, even if the thing doing the dragging did not deserve to call itself clean. He told himself this, so his daughter could grow up on a world where the valves stayed open. "Please," Soul said. He was a small man with soft hands and a face that had never once gone hungry. "Please, I have information I have. You don't understand what's down here, you don't." "They all have information," Dex said. "No, listen to me, there's something in the lower decks. Something I found, something I sold." His voice climbed. "I didn't know what it was. God help me. I didn't know what it was when I sold it." Roan glanced at Dex. Dex shrugged with one shoulder, the way he did. They were standing in the upper gantry of the Tessin Deepworks, a decommissioned ore processing platform, sunk into the ice of a moon nobody had bothered to name, past a catalog number. The kind of place men like Soul came to disappear into when the galaxy got too small to hold them. The lights were on emergency amber. The air smelled wrong. Roan had been doing this long enough that the air smelling wrong registered somewhere below conscious thought, the way a dog's hackles go up before the dog knows why. And he had already decided he did not like the smell when Soul said the next thing. "It sings," Soul whispered. "When you get close to it, it sings, and the dead ones sing with it." "Decks," Roan said. "Check the lower decks. You check the lower decks. I've got party supplies. I've got a candle situation that is frankly not resolved." "Dex," Dex went. He came back at a run, and he did not have his easy face on anymore. And behind him in the long amber dark of the gantry, something was moving that did not move the way a living thing moves. It came in a shuffling tide, a dozen, 2 dozen, and they had been men once. Station crew in faded coveralls, and they were not men now. Their eyes were threaded through with a pale blue light, fine filaments of it, branching like frost across the white of the eye and down into the slack faces. And they did not breathe, and they did not blink, and as they came, they were all of them making the same sound at once. It was a low, harmonized hum, many throats, one note. It rose and it found a second note, and the second note was perfect, was machined, was a chord struck by a single hand across 40 ruined mouths, and the hair stood up on the back of Roan's neck because the chord was not a thing a crowd does. Crowd is noise. A crowd is 40 wants, pulling 40 ways. This was 40 bodies and one will, and the one will was singing, and the song was beautiful in the way the inside of a furnace is beautiful. A thing you could admire right up until it took you. Door, Roan said. They made the door. The men who held the machine shop on the third deck had not slept in 2 days, and it showed in the way they aimed, which was badly, and in the way they flinched at the song coming up through the floor, which was constantly. For there were 9 of them when Roan and Dex came through the blast hatch and got it sealed and barred behind them. And Roan counted the 9 the way he counted everything, automatically sorting them into the living and the soon-to-be without meaning anything cruel by it. It was simply how he saw a room. Big foreman named Boone, ex-military by the way he carried the rifle and the way he didn't carry it like it made him safe. A station medic young, her name was Tam, her hands steady even now, which Roan respected more than he could have said. 2 miners, a cook, an old woman named Greta, who had run the platform's commissary back when the platform ran anything, and who had brought a steel ladle to a firefight and seemed entirely prepared to use it. The boy was maybe 7. He had his back to a tool locker, and his knees pulled up, and he was watching the floor where the song came through with the particular stillness of a child who has learned that being still is sometimes all you can do. His name was Wick. His parents were on the second deck. Nobody said what that meant, and everybody knew. Roan looked at the boy for 1 second longer than he meant to. Mira was 9. Mira would be 9 for 1 more day, and then she would be 10. And there was a box in the footwell of a skiff in the upper gantry with a model orbital station inside it. The kind you build piece by piece, because she had said once, offhand, the way children say the thing that lodges in you forever, that she wanted to build something that stayed up. 2, Boone said. Where'd you come from, you crew? We're contractors, Dex said. Tracted for what? Pest control, as it turns out. Boone didn't laugh. Nobody had laughed in 2 days. You know what these things are? We know they're hard to put down, Roan said. He'd put 3 down in the gantry, center mass, the way you're trained, and they had kept coming with holes in them, and only when Dex had taken the head off one had it dropped. And even then the blue filaments had gone on writhing in the dark of the skull for a long moment after, reaching, looking for the cord. Headshots. Everything else just makes them angry and slow. We figured that out, Tam said quietly. Day 1. After we ran out of people to figure it out on. Sol had told them the rest of it, screaming it through the hatch before the tide took him, and the rest of it was this, that he had found, in the deep cold storage of the deep works, a thing the previous owners had brought up from the ice and never logged. An organism, not native to the moon, native to nothing, in any human catalog. A chitinous, faintly luminous mass that the cold had held in a kind of sleep, and that the warmth of 9 months of squatters had woken. The veil, Sol had called it, because that was the sound it made, the first sound, before it learned the others. Veil. It had woken hungry and it had woken alone, and it could not abide being alone. Because the veil did not think in one body. The veil thought in a chorus. Out in whatever dark it came from it had been 1 billion bodies and 1 mind. A single vast resonance threaded through a whole biosphere. Every organism a voice in a song that had been singing since before the moon's ice had formed. And to be one veil, alone, cut off from the choir, was an agony so total it could not be borne. So it did the only thing it knew. It reached out and it took the nearest voices it could find. It threaded its pale light through the dead crew of the deep works, and it sang through their mouths to fill the silence. And every throat it took made the choir a little louder, a little less alone, and it would not stop, could not stop, until every voice on the moon, and then every voice it could reach, was singing the one perfect song. It doesn't want to kill us, Tam said. That's the thing nobody believes. It doesn't hate us. It wants us. It wants us to join. Same difference, said Dex. No, she said, it's worse. Hate you can fight. This thing pities us. For being alone in here. She tapped her own temple. It thinks we're suffering. It thinks it's saving us. For a moment, nobody said anything. The song pressed up through the deck plates, patient as weather. Dex pulled Roan aside, into the lee of a dead lathe, and dropped his voice. They had worked together 11 years, and most of what they said to each other, they said in this register, low and sidelong, the language of 2 men who had carried each other out of more rooms than either could count. Say the thing, Dex said. Don't say the thing, we could go now. Just us. Skiff's 2 decks up. We're fast. We leave the 9 of them. We make the gantry. We're gone before the song knows we're moving. You're home by 17:30. You frost the cake yourself. You don't mean that. I'm saying it's an option. Dex looked at the boy against the tool locker, then away, fast, the way you look away from a thing you've already decided about. I'm saying it out loud, so it's said. So later, nobody can tell me we didn't have a clean way out and I didn't put it on the table. It's on the table, Roan said. It's on the table. Take it off the table. Dex let out a breath. It's off the table, he almost smiled. You know your problem? 11 years and you've never once let me be the bad guy. I'd be good at it. I've got the face for it. You've got the face for the brochure, Roan said. Shh, not the work. It was an old joke between them and it landed soft. And that was the closest they came, in 11 years, to saying the thing under the thing, which was that neither of them was getting on a skiff, while a 7-year-old went dark against a tool locker. And both of them had known it before Dex ever said a word, and the saying of it had only ever been a way of touching the shape of who they'd decided to be a long time ago, and finding it still there. Roan checked his ammunition. He had 2 magazines and the back half of a third, and Dex had less. And the 9 survivors had a frightening assortment of mining tools, and 1 rifle that worked and 1 that mostly worked. And there were, by Boone's count, somewhere north of 200 of the worn, now between them and any way off the moon. With more coming up through the floors as the song reached down into the cold storage and woke things that had been sleeping since the start of the world. Skiff's in the upper gantry, Roan said. 2 decks up. It's fast, and it's small, and it'll hold all of us if nobody brought luggage. 2 decks of those things, Boone said. 2 decks of those things. You make it sound like a walk to the corner store. It's a walk to the corner store, Dex said, where the corner store is full of singing corpses, and the milk is also trying to kill you. Look, my partner has to be home by 1800. You don't want to meet the woman who set that deadline. So one way or another, we are leaving this charming establishment. The only question is the number of us that leave. They went at the elevator shaft because the elevator was dead, and the shaft was a straight climb, and a straight climb meant the Warren could only come at them 1 at a time. And 1 at a time was a math Roan could do. It went wrong the way these things go wrong, which is to say slowly and then all at once. The first deck was nothing, a held breath. The survivors climbing the access ladder in the dark, with the song a distant pressure below them. Then the second deck and the hatch they had to cross to reach the next shaft. And the second deck was where Wick's parents had been, and the second deck was where the choir had been busiest. And when Boone cracked the hatch, the song came through it like water through a broken dam, and the corridor beyond was full. They held the corridor. It was the worst 40 minutes of a life that had not been short on bad ones. They held it at a choke point, where the corridor narrowed past the old cargo lifts. And the Warren came in the tide, and Roan and Boone and the working rifle held the front, while behind them, the others got the hatch to the next shaft open, and the song was so loud, now it was a physical thing, a pressure behind the eyes, and Roan found that the 4 notes of his mother's tune had risen up in him unbidden, and he was humming them under his breath as he worked, slow, flat, off in some private key. A small, ugly human noise pushed up against that vast machined perfection, and it steadied his hands. The work of it was simple, and it was awful. Aim high, account for the body's forward stumble, take the head, step back, let the next one fill the gap, do it again. The Warren did not fear the dead piling at their feet. They walked over their own the way water walks over stones. A thing that had been a woman in a commissary apron came on with half its jaw gone, and the song still pouring out of the ruin of it, undimmed. Because the song did not live in the jaw, the song lived in the blue thread behind the eyes. And Roan put the thread out and stepped back, and there was already another behind it, and another, and the tide did not thin so much as the corridor simply ran out of room to hold them, which was a different and worse kind of problem. They lost the first miner there, a quiet man named Hollis, who had said maybe 10 words in 2 days. And they lost him because he reached past the choke point to drag a fallen tool back, and a cold hand closed on his wrist. Just one, almost tender, and pulled, and the tide folded over him. And by the time Boone got to the gap, there was nothing to pull back. Only Hollis's voice rising up a half-second later, out of all those mouths at once, joining the chord, finding the note, perfect, the way they always did. That was the cruelty of it that none of them ever got used to. You did not just lose a man, you heard him agree. Boone's face did something complicated, and then went flat again. "Hatch is open," Tam called from behind horse. "Shaft's clear, go go," they went. Roan held the gap last, walking backward, humming, putting the thread out of anything that came through the narrow place, until Dex closed on its ultimate collar, and hauled him into the dark of the shaft and slammed the hatch and dogged it, and the song hammered against the steel, muffled, furious, grieving. Certain it was right. It was in the middle of the worst of it that Dex started arguing about cake. They had pulled back to the cargo lifts to reload, the two of them shoulder to shoulder in the dark, and Greta the commissary woman was beside them, slamming a fresh tin of ration bars into a satchel, because, if they were going to die, she was not going to die hungry, and she had pushed a bar at Dex, and Dex had looked at it. "Is this? It's food. This is not food. This is a brick that food was standing near. It's the cinnamon one. It's the good one. There is no good one. Greta, Greta, look at me. We are in a tin can full of the singing dead, and you are trying to give me a cinnamon brick, and I want you to know that even now, even here, I have standards." He cracked the magazine home and leaned out and put down a thing that had been a minor and leaned back. "When we get out of here, the boy gets cake. Real cake, the kind with the layers. Not this. You don't even know if there's cake where we're going. There is always cake where I'm going. That's the deal I have with the universe. Lean out 2 rounds, lean back. It's a birthday. There's a birthday at the end of this. You don't show up to a birthday with a cinnamon brick. You show up with cake and you sing the song and the kid blows out the candles and makes a wish. And the wish is dumb. It's always dumb. It's a wish for a bigger bike or a dog the parents already said no to. And that's the whole point. That's the whole entire point of everything, Greta. Somewhere a kid gets to waste a wish on a dog." Greta looked at him like he had lost his mind, and then she laughed, one short, cracked bark of it. The first laugh anyone had laughed on the Deep Works in 2 days. And somewhere down the corridor the choir faltered. It was for less than a second. Roan heard it. The way you hear a single piano string go sour in a hall, the great perfect chord stumbling over something it could not parse. And he understood, in the place below thought where the dog's hackles live, that the laugh had done it. That the song had reached out toward Greta's voice, the way it reached toward all of them, hungry, to fold her in. And it had found her doing a thing the choir had no note for. Laughing at a brick in the dark, with death 2 meters off. A creature pulling joy out of nothing for no reason that served its survival, and giving it away to a stranger for free. The choir did not have a place to put that, so for half a second, the choir forgot the words. "Dex," Roan said slowly, "do that again." "Do what again? Insult the brick? Make her laugh." "I can't make her laugh on command, Roan. I'm not a—" He stopped. He'd heard it too, the catch in the song, and Roan watched it land on him. Watched the gears turn behind the quick eyes. "Oh," Dex said. "Oh, that's interesting." They lost the cook on the second deck, and they lost one of the miners at the top of the second shaft. And they nearly lost the boy. And the way they nearly lost the boy was that the boy let go of the ladder. He didn't fall. Roan caught him, one hand around the thin wrist, hanging the boy out over a black drop with the song rising up out of it, and the boy was not struggling. That was the terrible part. The boy was reaching down toward the song with a slacks and dreaming face, and his eyes when Roan hauled him up were beginning, just beginning, to thread with pale blue light at the corners. "He's going," Tam said, low, so the boy wouldn't hear, except the boy was past hearing. "It's in him. Got into a lot of us. It's slow if you fight it. He's 7'7". He doesn't know how to fight it." "How long?" "An hour. Maybe less. Then he sings." Roan held the boy against his chest. The boy was humming, very quietly, and the thing he was humming was the perfect chord, the choir's own note, rising in the small body like water filling a glass. Roan thought about the box in the footwell 2 decks up. He thought about Mira saying she wanted to build something that stayed up. He thought about 11 families, paying triple to drink, and a paneled room, and a slate, and all the years of being a thing dragged along the bottom of the current, and he found that he had made a decision somewhere in the last 10 seconds without consulting the part of him that did the math. Tam, he said. If a person was singing the wrong song, loud, right next to it, right in the middle of it, would it hear? She frowned. It hears everything. It's all one. That's not what I asked. If the song it's trying to sing got a wrong note shoved into the middle of it, loud enough, close enough to the center, would the wrong note spread? Would the whole thing have to stop and deal with it? Boone got there before the medic did. He was a soldier, and soldiers understand the shape of a bad plan the way other men understand the shape of a chair. Talking about feeding it something it can't swallow. I'm talking about the reactor, Roan said. The deep works ran on a thermal pile. A platform this size, it's still down there, still hot, just idling. You blow the containment on an idling thermal pile, you don't get a bang. You get a bloom, a wave front, heat and hard radiation, all at once, all through the structure, top to bottom. He looked at Tam. The cold storage. Through every voice it's got down there sleeping, all at once. It'd cook them, Boone said. Every one of them. The whole choir in one shot. It'd cook us too, said Greta. Not if we're on the skiff and clear, Roan said. But somebody has to be down there to do it. The containment's manual, on a pile that old. There's no remote. Somebody walks down into the middle of the song, into the loudest part, the center, where it's strongest, and somebody opens the containment by hand. The machine shop went quiet. Below them the choir sang on, patient, vast, certain, gathering its voices. And the somebody who does that, Dex said. He wasn't joking now. There was no joke left in his face. He doesn't make the skiff. No, Roan. It has to be the center, Roan said. It has to be where it's loudest, where all the voices are tightest. Or the bloom doesn't reach the cold storage fast enough, and the far ones wake up before it gets to them, and it just grows back. It has to be the loudest part, and it has to be a person, because the manual seals are keyed to a hand on a wheel, and there's nobody left down there with a hand that's still theirs. He shifted the boy in his arms. The boy hummed the perfect note. And somebody has to fly the skiff with the boy on it. The second the bloom hits. Because the bloom's what burns the thing out of his blood. The radiation kills the veil faster than it kills a body. If he's clear of the structure but close, if he's in the wash of it for just a second, it scours him and he lives. To be fast, you have to be already moving. That's you, Dex said, flying. That's the part where it's you flying and me. That's me on the wheel, Roan said. Because you're the better pilot, and you always have been, and don't argue with me about it now of all times. Here is the thing the veil could not understand, and it is the thing that killed it. The veil was old beyond the reach of human counting, and it was wise in the way a glacier is wise, slow and total and patient, and it had folded a thousand species into its choir across 1,000 worlds. And in all that long singing it had learned every shape a mind could take. It knew fear, because fear was useful, a voice strained at the edge of joining. It knew pain. It knew the way a captured mind would thrash before it harmonized. It even knew, after a fashion, love, because love was simply a strong bond between voices, and the choir was nothing but bonds, was love made total, was every voice belonging to every other voice forever, which was the gift it believed it was bringing. What it did not know, what it had no note for in all its endless song, was a voice that would choose, freely and alone, to go silent, so that another voice could go on singing, in a key the choir would never approve. It did not understand the box in the footwell. It did not understand that a man would walk down into the throat of it, into the heart of the song, humming 4 flat ugly notes his mother had hummed, scaling fish on a step on a dead world. Not because the 4 notes were stronger than the choir. They were not. They were nothing. They were a child's tune badly remembered. He hummed them because they were his, and because the boy had to make the skiff, and because somewhere there was a birthday in a model station that you build piece by piece, because a 9-year-old wants, more than a bike or a dog, to build a thing that stays up. Roan went down alone. He went down through the decks they had bled to climb, and the Warren let him pass, because the choir had finally understood that this voice was coming toward it, coming to join, and the choir was glad. Pale tide parted. He walked through it the way a man walks into surf, and they reached for him with cold-threaded hands and brushed his shoulders almost gently, welcoming, and the song swelled around him, joyous, certain it had won, that the lonely one had at last accepted the gift and was coming home to the chorus. He hummed his mother's tune the whole way down. The deeper he went, the more crowded it became, and the more crowded it became, the gentler they were with him. On the upper decks the Warren had come as a tide, mindless, hungry. Down here, near the heart of it, they stood in ranks nexons along the corridors like a congregation, and they turned their threaded eyes to follow him as he passed, and they sang to him, only to him, a soft, welcoming swell, and some of them lifted their cold hands not to grab but to touch, fingertips brushing his sleeve, his shoulder, the back of his neck, the way a crowd reaches to touch a man it has waited a long time to see come home. He recognized some of the faces. The miner, Hollis, the cook, a station foreman with half a jaw. They smiled at him with the parts of their faces that still worked. They were so glad. The song was so glad. The lonely one was coming at last, and it would never have to be alone again, and neither would he. And wasn't that the whole gift? Wasn't that mercy? Wasn't that love? He felt it begin in him then, exactly as Tam had said, the cold blue thread climbing up through the brush of all those gentle hands, reaching for the place behind his eyes, finding the 4 flat notes and bending toward them, patient, certain, ready to lift them into tune. He felt the choir's whole vast attention settled onto his small, ugly song, the way a hand settles over a candle. It wanted to make him perfect. It wanted, more than it had ever wanted anything, to fix the one wrong note. That was the point. That had always been the point. He gave it the wrong note to chase. He went on humming, flat and stubborn and his, down past the congregation and through the welcoming and into the reactor space, where the pile sat idling and hot, where the song was so loud it had a weight, where it was loudest, where it was the center, where every voice the veil owned was bent inward, singing the one note and waiting, leaning, hungry for the last lonely voice to finally fall into line. He put his hands on the wheel. His hands were shaking and they were his, and he thought, with a clarity that surprised him, that they had always been his, even when he'd told himself he was just a thing dragged along the bottom of the current. A thing dragged along the bottom doesn't choose, he had chosen. Maybe that was the only clean thing he had ever done. And maybe one clean thing was enough. And maybe it wasn't enough. And he was going to find out shortly, one way or the other, what the universe, made of a man who had done a great deal of harm. And then this. Della, he said out loud to the song. Tell her. I'm sorry I'm late. He hummed the 4 notes one more time, loud as he could, flat and stubborn in his, shoved them right down into the center of that perfect chord, a wrong note in the heart of the only song the Veil had ever sung, and he turned the wheel. On the skiff, 2 decks up and 300 meters out and accelerating into the black with the moon, falling away below, Dex Marlowe held the boy in his lap with one arm and flew with the other hand and counted, because Roan had told him to count, had told him the timing to the second, and Dex was a good pilot, the best, and he hit the number exactly. The bloom came up through the deep works, like a sunrise inside a building, not an explosion, a blossoming. The structure lit from within, deck by deck, faster than thought, a wavefront of heat and hard light racing top to bottom and down into the cold storage where 10,000 sleeping voices waited to wake, and it reached them before they woke, and it cooked the song out of every body it touched in a single white instant. And the great perfect chord that had been swelling toward its victory across the whole dying platform did not finish its note. It stopped. It stopped the way a hall stops when the conductor falls. All those voices, top to bottom, the whole vast resonance the Veil had built, across a moon, every worn and every sleeping thing in the ice, and the single old enormous mind threaded through all of them. The mind that had sung since before the ice, that had folded 1,000 worlds into itself, that had never in all its long existence encountered a voice that would die on purposes, to put a wrong note in its song. All of it went out at once, like a held breath finally let go, and the silence afterward was the loudest thing Dex had ever heard. The wash of the bloom caught the skiff. For 1 second, the radiation alarm screamed, and the hull went hot, and the boy in Dex's lap arched and cried out, and the pale blue threads in his eyes guttered and went dark, burned out, scoured clean, and then they were past it, falling free into the cold and the quiet, and the boy was crying the ordinary tears of an ordinary frightened child, which was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy, and the song was gone, Behind them, the Tessin deepworks burned cherry red against the ice and then went dark, and then was just a ruin, a dead thing on a dead moon, silent at last, and somewhere in the loudest, deepest heart of it, a man's hands were still on a wheel, and the votes were finished, and the universe had its answer and was keeping it to itself the way it does. There was no party. Della stood in the door of the little habitat unit, with the lights strung up behind her, and the model station box in her hands. The one Dex had brought back from the skiff, because he could not make himself leave it in the footwell, and she did not cry. Not then, because Mira was watching, and Della was the woman who set the deadlines, and she would set this one too. She would decide when. The crying would come later, in a room with the door shut for a long time. Not in the door, not with the strung lights, not with the child watching. Mira was 10 now. She had turned 10 somewhere in the long hours while 2 decks of the dead came singing, and a man walked down into the throat of a song. She did not understand yet, not really. And Dex stood on the step with his hands empty and useless and a thing in his chest like a fist, and tried to find the words and could not find them. Because there were no words, there had never been words for this, there was only the box. It was the boy who saved them in the end. Wick. 7 years old, with the burn-scored eyes that the medics said would heal, and the haunted stillness that they said might not. Standing on the step, beside Dex, because he had nowhere else in the galaxy to be. His parents being 2 decks of a dead platform now. He looked up at Mira in the strung lights, and he held out his hand, and in his hand was a ration bar, the cinnamon one, the good one, that Greta had pressed on him on the skiff, because Greta was alive. And a child should have something sweet, and the boy said, very serious the way 7-year-olds say things, "It's your birthday." He said there's supposed to be cake. He said you blow out candles, and you make a wish, and the wish is supposed to be dumb. He swallowed. I don't have cake. Shh, I have this. It's the good one. And Mira, who was 10 now, and who would spend years understanding what had been spent to make her 10, took the cinnamon brick from the burned boy's hand. And she did not cry either, because she was her mother's daughter, and she said, "What did you wish for?" "You're supposed to keep it secret," the boy said. "It doesn't come true." That's not real," said Mira. "That's just a thing people say." "I know," said the boy. "I wished anyway." And Della, in the door, with the box in her hands, made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite the other thing, and let them in, all of them, the boy and the pilot and the strung lights, and somewhere very far away, on a moon with no name, a ruin cooled in the dark, and did not sing, and would never sing again, because once, in the loudest part of it, a creature alone in the universe had done a thing the choir could not do, and never learned to do, in all its endless folding of worlds. It had chosen to be one voice on purpose. To the end, it had sung off-key, and the silence it left behind it was not the silence of the song. It was the other kind a house holds, the night you set a place at the table, and leave the chair empty. The kind that is not empty at all, but full brimming of a person-shaped absence so heavy it has weight. The kind that is the most human sound there is and the most stubborn, and the great perfect choir of the Vale, in all its billion-voiced wisdom, had never once in the long age of its singing learned how to make. They built the model station that week, the 3 of them, the boy and the girl and the woman, piece by piece on the floor of the little habitat unit, and Dex sat against the wall and watched and did not help because his hands were not steady, would not be steady for a while. It was a fiddly thing, the model. The instructions were bad. Twice it fell over, but they got it standing in the end. They got it to stay up. It is still up. The boy lives there now. The girl shows him on clear nights the catalog number of a moon you cannot see and tells him the dumb true story of how the silence got made. And the boy, who is older now, who flinches less, says the same thing every time. The thing that has become a kind of prayer between them. The closest thing to a song either of them will sing. Supposed to be cake. There is always cake where we're going. That's the deal we have with the universe.